Welcome to you, sir. Why does Walmart get a pass?
Walmart gets a pass because they performed better than anybody really thought they were going to perform, despite the fact that we just said it was disappointing. Because it wasn't disappointing. We knew Target had a tough fourth quarter. We knew electronics were tough for a lot of people. Toys were tough for a lot of people. That was already in people's thought process. Why is the stock up? Because people looked at it and went, hey, it was okay. And the guidance was, I would say, mediocre. But everybody feels okay about that because they're showing growth for next year. They're showing good performance in the U.S. stores. They're growing 35% a year online. And we used to say it was off of a small base. Now we're talking about $50 billion in sales and not a small base
So
anymore.
The 35% online growth, is it fair to compare that to Target's 19% growth during the holiday period and say they're doing it better?
It's fair to say that Walmart has been growing faster online than Target, and a heck of a lot faster than Amazon, and they're growing off of a really big base. So clearly they're doing something right, and it's really coming because they're doing such a good job with buy online, pick up in store, drive through store, and deliver from store. They've got 3,200 stores now where you can pick up in store, and 1,600 that'll deliver to your house.
Courtney, we were talking earlier about McMillan. I knew him years ago when he ran international. I haven't seen him. You spent a lot of time with him. We were talking about how he's not particularly defensive. And he's a guy who talks openly about embracing risk and growth and potential failure. Totally. That seems to be helping in some ways in terms of reassuring his shareholder base.
Absolutely, and I think that was part of the line of questioning we were kind of trying to go after there with talking about some of these bets that they've made on businesses like Jet Black. Yeah, they closed it down, but he said, I don't think we did a great job communicating what we were going after there. We knew that that wasn't something we could scale. We were trying to learn a lot about conversational commerce, and we did. Box checked is sort of what he said. I said, well, does any of that give you pause about continuing on that innovative entrepreneurial streak with some of these things that haven't worked, like selling off ModCloth after buying it? And he said, no, it really just sort of gives us more information to move forward. And he uses the word faster a lot, David. He thinks that they've just moved too slow, and he keeps wanting to push the envelope and do so a little bit faster.
Can they buy their way out of this? You got DoorDash and Postmates floating out there, reportedly considering new listings. What should they buy?
They don't need to buy their way out of this. They need to do what Courtney just said. They need to be aggressive on new ideas and make sure they're incorporating them in, whether they buy them in or they build them. But Doug McMillan is doing well with the street because he's doing all the right things, right? He's doing the right things for the shareholder with return to shareholder and dividend and buying back stock and all that. But he's doing the right thing for the customer. He's giving them what they want, when they want it, where they want it. But the associates are happier. The reason they missed part of the fourth quarter was because they were nicer to the associates than they had been regarding scheduling and the fact they didn't cut them back on hours when a lot of them showed up to shop on the to work on the holidays. And he's doing all the right stuff for the community at large, right? I mean, he's a guy who's now saying,
it's a woke Walmart.
It's a woke Walmart.
So, Courtney, are we surprised that they haven't been impacted, or at least he can't quantify any impact yet from the coronavirus? When you think of Americans paying super low prices, you think of imports from China.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised to hear him say, we don't really know, and we do most of our manufacturing out of there.
Right. So when we had the big conversation about tariffs, and you would have thought maybe on first blush, Walmart has to be impacted. Think about everything they sell. Like he says, in the United States, 2/3 of what they sell is actually here. No, that's because a lot of it's food, because they're buying from food and farmers that are right here in America. Another third is imported, but not all of that third comes from China. So the supply chain doesn't have potentially as much of an impact as maybe we would have thought. And then when you think about demand, Walmart stores in China have actually stayed open. Now, they've said a lot of what is being purchased right now is shifting towards consumables, so food, beverage, I mean, really sort of basic necessities. So you might see an impact to some of the margins because they're not selling clothes and these higher margin items in China. But so far, so good for Walmart, and they're not incorporating it into their guidance in a material way.
Would you close Chile if 3/4 of your stores were destroyed?
Yes. And I think that they'll take a very responsible position on all the international markets. They know which are growing, which aren't, what to stay, whether or not to be there. They're doing all that right. And in China, the supply chain's already starting to come back. And yes, it's harder for some people, but in the retail side of the business, the kind of retailing we're talking about, the supply chain's coming back already. And as long as it's back by sometime in March, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal for most of the people bringing product out of China. nobody's that devoted to China anymore. Clearly, Walmart's not. And then on the sales into China side, Walmart's probably doing the best because they have been willing to stay open and provide services to everybody that needs it. So you've got to give them credit. They looked at all this and said, we've got it figured out. They've already started pre-buying stuff on things they knew would be a problem from China. So they've done all that already.
We used to talk about Home Depot as being the first to open post-hurricanes. This is like that on steroids, right?
Walmart does that now everywhere, not just in this coronavirus problem. They do it here when there's an issue.
Really quick, I mean, you put out a money note last week quantifying exactly how much exposure all the retailers have to China. So just name some names. Who's the most exposed from a supply and demand side, and have we seen it in the stock?
Well, if you're looking at it on the supply side, people like, Wayfair have a big issue, right? If you're looking at it from the demand side, selling into China, the people who are hit the hardest is the high end. So if you're any of the big high luxury retailers, that's been a big problem because it's affecting all of Asia, not just China. It's greater China and Asia. So those are issues too. But in general, you can look at every retailer and right down through the game of all the brands. It's a big deal when China and Asia aren't working. And if tourism stops completely, not just to here, but to everywhere, well, then those impacts really haven't been accounted for. I think the market is taking the coronavirus very lightly. And they've looked at it and said it's not that big a deal, and supply is going to be okay, and we'll reopen for business sometime between now and June as far as sales. The back half of the year won't be that affected. I actually think the market's right, but boy, that's a big bet.